Evening, I'd like to call to order the City of West Palm Beach Historic Preservation Board meeting for April 23rd, 2024. Can we please begin with a roll call?
Amanda Skyer.
Here.
Kirsten Kellogg. James Murphy. David Burke.
Here.
Kyle Waters.
Here.
Gerald Bucksmall. May the record reflect Gabriel Jarlowski and Trent Swift are not in attendance tonight, and Jeff Sheldon will be tardy.
Thank you. We now move on to approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting. Do we have any changes to the agenda as presented?
Good evening, everybody. Benjamin Salata, City Historic Preservation Planner. We do have one change to our agenda. Case number 2420, which is 309 Edgewood, has been asked to be continued. Request was made yesterday by the applicant, and we move to the main agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any changes by members of the board? Okay, seeing none, can we have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the agenda for tonight's Historic Preservation Board meeting as noted by staff.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. We now move on to approval of the minutes from the March 26th meeting. Any changes to the minutes as presented in your packet?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. We now move on to the report of the Historic Preservation Planner.
Good evening again, Benjamin Salata. For starters, I'd like to welcome Gerald Buxton to his first meeting as a second alternate. Thank you very much for coming today. We have approved since our last meeting 210 level 1 reviews, 0 level 2s, and 33 zoning applications. We are still asking for nominations for annual awards next month, especially of craftsmen. We're looking for great applicants for projects in the past few years. Please feel free to either fill them out online or through my email. I'm also going to say at every meeting until July 31st that we are hosting the National Alliance of Preservation Commissioners Forum Conference in 2024. This will be from July 31st to August 4th. This is all the historic preservation planners coming from around the country. Working with certified governments is a great way to learn and to teach, as we have guests in our city in probably the hottest time of the year. So let's show them how good we can be in the off season as well. Also a request for qualifications to update the 2005 design guidelines is in procurement, and we have been authorized to proceed with soliciting quotes. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Great. Would we be able to see the scope or
Yes,
any
I
of the
can share that
specific?
with you, yes.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
We now move on to remarks by the chairperson. The matters before us this evening are quasi-judicial in nature, which means we base our decisions on competent, substantial evidence that comes before us. We ask you to please keep that in mind while speaking. For each project on the agenda, the applicant will have an opportunity to make a presentation. 10 minutes per presentation. If there is a demolition involved, 15 minutes will be allowed. After the applicant presentation, staff will make their presentation. After staff's presentation, we will open it up to public comment, which will be limited to 3 minutes per person. And we do have public comment cards in the lobby. If you plan on speaking, please fill one out. And after public comment, if there is any, the applicant has an opportunity for rebuttal. And after that, we will go into executive session. To lead into this, we need to let you know if we've had any conversations outside of this meeting, so we will now declare ex parte communications.
As to all matters on tonight's agenda, I, David Burke, have not had ex parte communications, have not received written communications, have not conducted an investigation, have not made a site visit, have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
As to all matters on tonight's April 23rd, 2024 Historic Preservation Board meeting, I, James Murphy, have not had ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit. I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
As to all matters on tonight's agenda, I, Amanda Skyer, have had ex parte communications with the preservation planners for the city. I have not received any written communications. I've not conducted investigations, nor made site visits, or received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
As to all matters on tonight's agenda, I, Kristen Kellogg, have not had ex parte communications, have not received written communications, have not conducted an investigation, have not made a site visit, have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
As to all matters on tonight's agenda, I, Kyle Waters, have not had ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit, and I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record. Thank you.
As a matter of this evening's agenda, I have not had ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit. I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
Thank you. We have one public comment, Margie Ansura.
Good evening. I'm here to request the West Palm Beach Historic Preservation Board undertake the process to designate the former First United Methodist Church of West Palm Beach an historic and/or landmark property in order to protect it from substantial change or demolition. This is vitally important not only to protect this historic building during the current times of high redevelopment pressure, but for all times, so that both the current and future owners will have to retain this architectural gem in the heart of our city, which is also a major part of the cultural and social service soul of our great city. Under Section 94-48 of the city's Zoning and Land Development Code, eligible applicants for historic or landmark status may be initiated by the Historic Preservation Board. The guidelines for designation include the property shall be at least 50 years old. The church was built in 1926. Be associated with events that made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of the city's history or the lives of persons significant in the city's past. The qualifications for a landmark designation include outstanding cultural significance. Facts about the church that meet these qualifications include the church was built in 1926 as one of the largest examples of Spanish colonial revival architecture in the world. The original church bell was in part purchased through a $25 donation from the city of West Palm Beach for dual use as the city fire department emergency alert bell. The church was lost to the congregation due to the building bust and bank failures of the late 1920s. Through community-wide efforts, including backyard barbecues and even women selling their wedding rings, $50,000 was raised within a week and the church was reclaimed. The church has served the community by housing survivors from the 1928 hurricane in the basement of the church for 11 months. Established a Cuban congregation in 1963 for those fleeing Castro and communism. For generations, hosted baccalaureate services for seniors graduating from Palm Beach High and other local high schools. Was a founding congregation for Cross Ministries, still going strong 45 years later, last year serving more than 111,000 local residents experiencing hunger. Partnered with neighborhood housing services to stabilize and improve historic downtown, Grandview Heights, and Flamingo Park neighborhoods. It was also the church's home to thousands of local residents, many of whom were notable leaders and business owners in our city. My husband and I have been members of First United Methodist Church of West Palm Beach and its successive congregations since 1980. I am making this appeal on behalf of the thousands who came before us, who created the loving and community-serving church, which has been and is such an important part of our lives and so many others in our city. I urge you to act on this expeditiously, and I've provided for each of you background evidence to support my statement here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. So, do you need a motion to formally put it under consideration?
To advance, I believe a motion must be made.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion? Any discussion? I mean, I think very strong evidence that you provided. I personally was baptized in this church. I saw all three of your children also were. It's, I think, a very important part of our architectural legacy in the city. And I think it's unfortunate that it wasn't designated many years ago, and certainly I understand your concerns about the development pressure in the city and how important it is to preserve as many of our landmark structures as possible. So I'm in support of it. I don't know if there's any further conversation or someone would like to make a motion.
I'll make a motion.
As the board attorney, I think we need, excuse me, it needs to be made clear whether the motion or the ask is that it's be designated historic or whether it be designated a landmark. Those are two distinct categories.
Yes. Well, so my understanding is that the benefits of being designated a landmark, I guess, are all used up with in terms of the TDRs. Like there was a doubling of the TDRs. So given that, what is the difference?
Well, there's a different process. There's a different, I mean, if you look in the code, there's two separate sections. What?
It's purely, I guess, honorary. It doesn't convey
Okay,
any.
why don't you step up and?
It's an honorary, I guess, additional honor that you can place on a building to be a landmark on top of being designated, but it does not convey any additional, I guess, rights since the TDRs are now gone.
So can we do that concurrently, or does it need to be designated a historic structure first?
I believe it can be done concurrently.
Okay. So motion to do both at the same time.
It's the board's choice.
We need to review the process, legally, how this can be done and what the investigation, and of course, it's not approved by me, it's approved by city council. So we need to do our due diligence on this to make sure if it can be done correctly, to be done correctly.
Okay.
I move to initiate the process to designate the former First United Methodist Church of West Palm Beach as historic and a landmark property.
Can you turn on your microphone?
Yes, I second that.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Matt. Motion carries unanimously. And so the next steps will be staff will write a report that they'll present to the historic board. Is that correct?
Yes, hopefully by next month.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could just say that I have been the church historian for many terms, and I have all the source material right now. It's spread all over my dining room table, but we do have handwritten accounts, we have typed up, we have newspaper articles, so we do have the supporting documentation. I'm happy to
Wonderful.
work
Well,
with staff.
Well, thank you for all of your effort, because I think that will be of great assistance to staff in gathering those materials. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a question. Who owns the property now? And are they aware that this item is being up for discussion?
It's owned by Related, and I believe there's been a lot of discussion about the historic value of this building with the redevelopment of City Place. I think there's been some pretty significant press on it, both locally and nationally. I don't believe anybody locally who's involved in historic preservation does not know about this project and where it is right now.
But they don't, I
That
just wanted to
doesn't
say,
answer my
they
question.
don't, as I read it, they do not have to approve it. I mean, I'm all for working with people, but they don't have to bring it forward and they don't have to cooperate in the process as I read the code, but I'm not an attorney.
I'm not implying they do need to be.
I didn't know that.
Will they be noticed if when it's going to be on
Yeah,
the meeting?
I think that this can be considered, because this is, I don't think, ever been done before, as both landmark and historic designation. So I think that this should be taken as a first step, and that if before there is a final decision, that there would be notice and an opportunity to be heard by the property owner, certainly.
Is there a current proposal for the redevelopment of this site?
Nothing has been submitted to the city for the redevelopment of the Hillman Theater / First Methodist.
And what happens while the property is going through the designation process, while it's under consideration? Is there some protection? What happens during that period?
I'm unclear if anything different would happen than what is happening right now.
Well, I mean, so if they are to submit something, Melissa, I don't know if you could respond to this. So if we're in the course of vetting whether it's going to be designated or not, and if there is an application for redevelopment submitted, what happens then?
I do. So I'm going to let Dodie answer some of these questions.
Glass, I'm the Assistant Director of Development Services. So a couple of things. I believe, from my understanding, that no property's ever been designated without the property owner being a party to that action, one. Two, they do have for now, some permits related to what they're doing, related to some interior renovations, and they have conditions of approval that are already subject on this property they are really in place from the DRI approval itself. They have not come in to do anything beyond what they have right now in the process, but they are looking at what they're doing. They're looking at an interior rehab of the site. There's phases of that. The first phase was obviously the exterior fencing and so forth that's in place now, and then they have in process another application for the work that they're doing with the additional phases inside. And again, there are provisions that are already provided for in the DRI approval. So it sounds like probably what we need to do is several things. One is we need to go through what the existing status is of the property, what the existing status is under its entitlements, and then talk about what the process is to do designation and historically what has been done in the city with such designations and what the process would be going forward.
Okay, so there's no active applications for exterior work?
No, not at this time that I'm aware of. And I mean, it's possible something could have been submitted that I'm unaware of in the EPL system, but I do know that they're coming forward with what they're doing for the improvements there. So again, you can't separate the owner from the property, and there are things that are underway, and it needs to be a complete conversation of all of the parts.
Okay, thank you. Melissa, do you need owner consent for a commercial property to designate?
I think that the owner needs to have notice and an opportunity to be heard. That's what I believe.
Of course, of
So,
course.
will it take owner consent? I don't want to answer that right now. I don't think the code requires that, I don't want to answer that right now. I think the owner needs notice and an opportunity to be heard, and we can address that as we go forward. I'd like an opportunity to discuss it further with the city attorney and with planning department.
Okay.
The code does not explicitly say the owner needs to give consent. That doesn't mean in the reality of property ownership and real property rights, it may be important. But again, let's reserve that discussion for another time.
Okay.
I also would say the existing agreements on that property and the development orders and the entitlements that are associated also need to be understood in terms of what would be appropriate in that process as well.
Right, and I have looked at a lot of these documents, including the original DRI. So there's a lot there to go through to understand, and we can begin that process.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions? Okay.
Given
thank
that
you.
it's not in an historic district, do we even have jurisdiction to consider this, or is this something for the city council?
Yes, you have jurisdiction under the code to consider it. You're not taking any you're not making any decisions today, other than this body is asking the city to pursue it and to examine the options. That's what I take this as direction, and we will certainly do that.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other public comment for an item that's not on the agenda this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the swearing in of our speakers. If you plan on speaking, please rise and raise your right hand to be sworn in.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you. Please be seated. Our first continued case is 24-08254 Granada Road.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Yanni Varnava, representing Varnava Design Studio. On behalf of our client, I'm here to present the exterior modifications of the landmark residence located at 254 Granada. During our last presentation, we were asked to provide additional information on the front facade of the house.
And then how do you get out of it? If you...
In particular, original drawings or images showing the front windows. We submitted an original record request asking for any available drawings. Unfortunately, we did not receive anything from the records department. And as I mentioned in our last presentation, when we originally started working on this house, we were communicating with Mrs. Frederica Mittner, and she also confirmed at the time that she was not able to locate any available plans. We also searched the extensive image records from the Palm Beach Historical Society, and once again, we were not able to locate any old images for this house. Although we were not able to locate any of the above items in today's presentation, we included close-up images of the specific window openings. And I will go through our presentation. This, once again, is the original house with the old additions, some of the interior images, more interior images. The project, along with the neighboring properties. Existing and proposed site plan, you had no comments on the site plan. Existing and proposed floor plans, no comments on the floor plans. Existing and proposed roof, once again, the existing roof has multiple finishes, and once completed would be one uniform finish of barrel tile roof. This is the front elevation that we were discussing the last time, and the areas we were discussing was the windows here and here. We also discussed a little bit the front facade of the two-story portion. Once again, we have no original drawings, but we do have images we included today with us that show, in particular right here, where the stucco patch happened. We don't know how many years ago, but it clearly shows that it used to be an opening, elongated right here. This window is below the Cave portico, and then this window is on the other side, closer to the east. Over here we see the little access for the crawl space. Once again, right here, we see the stucco patch, and once elongated, and it stops right somewhere over here, which is the finished floor. And then this picture here is the interior. This clearly shows that it was patched some time ago. And it shows the patch right here. It extends here, and then it continues down to the floor. Based on this evidence, We strongly believe that originally these openings were elongated. We will proceed to the next slide. We wanted to include images of similar style homes from the LC district that show similar configuration. This house on the bottom left especially shows 3 arched windows with a French door above and the Juliet balcony, similar to what we're proposing. The rest of the houses, again, show 3 openings aligned and symmetrical with the ones above. We also wanted to include a couple more options. We would love to go with our original proposed, but we wanted to include another 2 just in case it will help. This same configuration with indentation of arched stucco indentations to match the arched portico. And then the one to the left, French door, single, under the balcony. And why we wanted to do this is because the existing elevation, which is right here, it shows the French door, but it's not aligned and it's really off. It throws the whole elevation off. Once again, we would love to proceed with our original design and would like to consider that. I will proceed with the rest of the elevations. So this is the rear elevation of the house, existing and proposed. You had no comments on this one. Existing and proposed east elevation. Once again, no comments. Existing and proposed west elevation. And here we have the window schedule and door schedule. And finally, we have the design details. At this point, we would like to ask permission to use a light green color for the doors and windows. The staff recommended to go with white, but we feel the light green matches the time period of the house. The color we would like you to consider is a light green by Faro & Ball, and I have the color sample with me today, in case you want to review it. And this concludes our presentation.
Thank you. Questions of the applicant?
I have a question. Do you have the photographs you took from the interior showing the patching of the windows?
Yes.
Those were the 2 windows in the grand living room area, right?
That is correct.
Do you have any interior photographs of the dining room and the existing doors and walls there?
No, the dining room I do not.
No.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any markings that indicate that the window openings were different in that dining room area?
No windows. These were the only interior images that show any change in the plaster in this case. And these are the only exterior locations that show that the stucco was modified.
So the 3 windows you're requesting in the dining room, what is that based on, that request?
Okay. So these 2 windows, actually, the window to the far left here, that's part of the foyer, the entry foyer. And then these 2 windows are located in the dining room. And the location of the windows are centered in the dining room, so everything is symmetrical in the interior. And then this one is centered with the foyer, which shows it right here. So this is the one in the foyer, and then these two are in the dining area.
What is the relationship of what you're proposing to what's existing?
What's existing is in the dining room is the single French door with a little step stool over there. And instead of the door, we're proposing two windows here. This window remains at the same location, the one in the foyer.
Is it the same dimensions, the opening, or are you changing the opening dimensions?
Let me see. They appear to be the same of the window right here. This is the rectangular window. I believe right now it's just a framed window. There's just a framed opening. And it appears to be the same, yes. So pretty much the only thing we're changing down here is this French door, trying to align the windows with the opening above and in the interior.
You had presented two different options. You said option A with the windows, with the arches. Option B is the French doors.
That is correct.
Now, we would be removing a window in the foyer if we went with option B.
Correct.
Okay. Has the owner felt if we remove that, how that functionality would play on out? I'm just curious to see what your thoughts would be.
Sure. We discussed it, and really the hierarchy of the exterior architecture over here is to align the openings. Even if we have to eliminate the window in the foyer, we're okay with it. But it's very important for my client to have, a more organized facade, because right now it's just so off balance that it really throws things off.
Sure. So the important aspect is the symmetry that we can. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
I just pulled up the street photos from Google, and those go back in date to 2007, and they actually show what looks to be original metalwork around that window on the left that's right there that's since been removed, and then it's also showing like a Juliet balcony almost detail railing that's on the right. So, in what I'm looking at, it just looks like the metalwork has been removed and the fenestration replaced at some point in time. And based on what I'm seeing, I don't believe there's any evidence to support at this point now that those weren't original openings. The fenestration has changed, but it looks like that is what the opening was on the right.
Right here?
Yeah. That, and then the window to the left was a window with a metal grill on it.
Okay. Well, when we first started working on this project, this is how it was. So these are original images of the. But thank you for that.
Any further questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to the staff presentation.
Good evening. Ann Hamilton presenting case number 24-08. This is a changed request for ad valorem pre-construction at 254 Granada Road. I'll be brief as the applicant has covered most of the changes that have been made since the last presentation. This is in the El Cid Historic District. As you can see, this is the current status of the site. The request is for an addition, which didn't garner any comment last time, so I'll focus more on the front facade changes. The changes in the front opening the changes of the front opening include enlarging some openings and converting an opening on the second story to a French door with a Juliet balcony. These are the images that the applicant showed of the stucco repairs on one portion of the building. This is a photo of the building. This is the oldest photo that we have in our records. This is from 1990, I believe, during the Florida Master Site File survey for the, at that point, potential LCID Historic District. As you can see, the openings are the same as they are now, but with different fenestration. And this is the Sanborn map and green card. Obviously, they don't provide any information on the fenestration, although it does, interestingly, not show that covered entryway over the front. This is the proposed site plan, the floor plan, the guest house, which has minor changes, and the proposed alterations. This is the main facade that has alterations under discussion. These two windows, both near the covered entry and furthest to the left, are proposed to be lengthened down to almost to the floor, and then changes to this area, the second floor window to become a French door, and these to become 3 windows. This is the rear elevations, side, and some of the details. Regarding the applicant's request to change the color, that's not something I had been aware of before, but I'll defer to the board on that request. This is the rendering, and we believe that it meets all codes and are recommending approval with the condition that the windows have white frames with clear glass and OG muntins, although obviously that's under discussion now too. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Are you able to pull that up on Google so that?
Yeah, the old street view that was being referenced?
Yes.
I think there's actually possibly a better way to see it, which is an old real estate listing, which I might be able to pull up. I believe this is from 2010. Is that big enough?
Do you think that was original grill work, or is it some kind of security barrier? Because I see it on the other windows as well.
It's very difficult to tell in the this image, but
oh, it looks like it's on that one, but not on the other windows.
This one, but not on these windows.
And do you believe those windows in the entry, and I think that's the living room, to be replacement windows, and that they were, I guess, French doors, or what do you believe based on the evidence presented?
Based on the stucco, I would tend to believe that they were either much taller windows or were French doors. I think we've seen examples where it could be either on homes of this style.
And how often do you see like a French door over a French door? Because now that we know that this originally was a French door, which it is now, with a Juliet balcony, to see that same feature right above it.
I can't think of any examples off the top of my head. I wouldn't say it's a traditional pattern.
It is a traditional to have one over one, or?
No.
Oh, okay, okay. Any further questions of staff? Okay, thank you. Thanks. Do you have any members of the public that wish to speak on this project? Okay, seeing none, we'll go into executive session.
So I can start. Hopefully, my colleagues will give me some clearer direction, because right now I can't really support any of the front facade alterations. I find, regrettably, not enough evidence to convince me one way to deviate the primary facade. In particular, the front covered entrance, that one set of French doors really becomes the signifier to the entrance of the house, yet the front door is still offset into the side. So I'm a little disturbed by that. Just your eye sees the door through the arch and thinks that's the front door. And the interior evidence that they showed, the elongated window, I'm still not convinced that may have been a door. Maybe it was just one of these elongated kind of guillotine kind of sash windows. I'm not sure. But I was hoping that the applicant would have received some hints or some more evidence to point us in a direction to be able to support his request. But as of now, I'm not seeing any way for, quite honestly, any of the alterations to the front.
I'm in agreement. Obviously, fenestration is a huge part of historic structures, especially historic structures that are rather simple in expression. And I don't see enough evidence to support this. Also, the project that or the property that I referenced last time, that was 139 Monroe, that has a lot of similarities. That fenestration is also more consistent with what we're seeing in this image that's currently on the screen. So I think you have to have really substantial evidence to be able to change fenestration so completely on a front elevation.
I think that's an interesting question that I would ask of Ms. Anderson. Is the burden on the applicant to show the absence or existence of this as an original structure, or is it a situation where it's presumed to be one way or another absent a record showing? I guess the lawyer in me is sitting here and thinking, if there's no evidence, and we heard testimony there is no evidence one way or another, are we to take that as the applicant being unable to meet the burden, or is it a situation where we take it to mean it's within our discretion at that point?
I think it's within your discretion as the board. You have to look at the situation and, as a totality, and look at the evidence you have before you and make certain assumptions if you have to. I think that's part of the process. And so I'm not sure if the applicant has the burden of showing you exactly what was there before, but you have to take what you have as a board and use that to make a decision. And if you find as a board that the evidence leans one way or the other, then you base your decision on that.
And thank you for that. Given that insight, I would say that I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Murphy and Ms. Kellogg that this is a situation where the features as they exist, and especially this historic photo, I'd be reluctant to agree with these sweeping changes as being appropriate.
I'd also like to just go ahead and state Standard 7 of the Secretary of Interior Standards And that says that replacement of missing features will be substantiated by documentary and physical evidence.
What's the year of the photo on screen?
The surveys were done in 1989 and 1990, so somewhere in that general time frame.
Also, I don't think I mentioned, but sweeping around to the other three sides, I have no issues with any other aspects of the proposal, including the height of the addition.
So now that this is a tax abatement application, I think we can apply the standards a little bit more rigorously. And so building on your statement, so you would feel that all other aspects of the project are in alignment with the Secretary of Interior standards and it qualifies as a tax abatement project?
Yes.
I agree.
So are we looking at a matter of conditions to bring the primary facade in alignment?
Yeah, and I would also say that once this house is underway for construction, if they choose to do the demolition on the interior around those openings to figure out what the framing originally was, they can come back before staff or before our board to request these changes once they have that substantial evidence.
So the conditions, I guess, do we know when that front porch was added? Was that a feature that has acquired significance? Because it doesn't, I think that was what was indicated on the green card, is that it wasn't original.
It would be sometime between 1962, which is when the green card would have been created, in 1989, which is when this photo would have been taken, or 1990.
Kristen, do you think it's possible that that was the front door?
I definitely think it's possible. I've also seen a property in the Bel Air Historic District that has some similarities in which there was a covered front entry piece, kind of such as what we're seeing here, and then there was just a large window, and then to the right was actually a door, so you actually looked at the window. It was kind of an unusual configuration. And I mean, I also have a question for Ms. Hamilton. Do you think that you're quite certain that that feature wasn't there, like that covered entry, based on the green card? Or do you think that, I mean, I'm just looking at that other property that's on Monroe, and it has a very similar feature. I mean, the articulation's different, like it doesn't have that arch. So I just want to know for sure if there's any way to, like, I would hate to.
I'm not sure that there's
Okay.
a way to. I will say, you know, in this rear section of the green card, they did mark this area as being 50%, which is a
Okay.
covered area. So I would think if they were going to mark that, they would have marked the front, but I wasn't there, so.
Yeah. I do think it's unusual, especially the way it's articulated.
There's also a lot of similarity between the house next door and this one. It's almost like they're like mirror images of each other, with their massing and the location of the chimney. And so I wonder if that provides some hint as to how the front door was originally designed. It's the building immediately to the west. Thoughts on a direction?
I'm prepared to make a motion for approval with conditions.
Okay. And what are you thinking for that front entry there? Keep the existing opening, and then if they find evidence of it being a larger opening.
You're talking about this portion right here.
Yeah.
I think I would have some, just based on experience and knowing the neighborhoods, I think that modification is relatively minor.
Mm-hmm.
And still maintains the spirit of it, especially considering that I'd say there's more evidence than not that it may have not been there originally, given the green card.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more concerned about the fenestration.
Well, I'm talking about the window, the opening in that entry there. Trying to see if there's any like compromise, if it's like a wholesale, we don't want to see, any of these openings change from what they are, or if there's some kind of, because I do think that's a little up in the air. I think we have more substantial evidence that those openings in the dining room and the entry are as they are today, but perhaps it's like they've presented some evidence.
Right. I mean, the proportion of those windows is similar to a house that has a lot of similarities that's not too far away. I think there's evidence that they've been altered, but I don't know if is there enough to do a sweeping change of the fenestration when we don't have more evidence of that?
Okay, well, do you want to try a motion?
Yes, and again, I would encourage the applicant, if this motion passes, to do some selective demolition on the interior to give us more evidence and come back, because I would love to see, if that's what these openings were, I would love to see that implemented. We just need the evidence there to support it. I move that the Historic Preservation Board approve application, the green windows we didn't talk about, or if we did, I missed it. I would be in support of the green color for the fenestration. So,
Frames?
what's that?
Green frames?
Mm-hmm. Okay. getting back to the staff conditions. I move that the Historic Preservation Board approve application number 24-08 for alterations, additions, and ad valorem tax exemption in accordance with standards 9 and 10 is set forth in the Historic Preservation Ordinance, ordinance number 3554-02. The motion is based on the testimony presented along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitutes competent substantial evidence. In addition, the approval of this request is made conditional upon the following restrictions, stipulations, and/or safeguards that I move are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the Historic Preservation Ordinance and the historic preservation element of the comprehensive plan of the City of West Palm Beach. The conditions include the following. 1, all new windows on both structures shall have white or green frames, pick one color, with clear glass and OG muttons with low E permissible on non-street facing elevations. And 2, the front fenestration shall match the existing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Project approved. Thank you. Our next case is case number 24-19616 Claremore Drive.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to present again the requested changes from last meeting. Should I refresh you on the project, or should I move right into the changes that were requested?
I think the changes, please.
Yeah, we're okay. So the property is located between Georgia and Florida avenues, and it is a combination of the first volume and the second volume. These are the existing elevations from the north. You asked for us to label them north and south. So this is facing Claremore, the top one. The bottom one is facing south, the rear yard. This is the east elevation facing the pool area, and this is the west elevation facing towards Georgia, but the adjacent lot. So this is the proposed, it was brought up that the fenestration of the existing house would be more appropriate to be copied for the second story addition, which we have done here, and we've shown the area bubbled that was addressed. The south elevation was the same as presented last time. This is the east elevation, which is facing the pool area. We used the same type of double window structure, which was on the existing house in several locations, and we changed the lower doors that were sliding last time to become French doors. The blank elevation to the west is now has several smaller windows and a window at the top of the stairs. And the ceiling heights were verified as in the existing pool house. We call it the second structure. It's at 9 feet, and in the existing historic main house, it's 8 foot 10 and a half. And I believe that's everything.
Thank you. Questions of the applicant? The round window that you're showing,
Yes.
was that on the previously proposed plans at all?
No, it was not. There were no windows there. I thought that they would be, I've looked in the area a bit, and there are some round windows. It's just that when you, my opinion is that when you do a very small window and it's in a bathroom like that, it looks like a bathroom window. Whereas if you were to do something of this nature, it makes it a little bit more ornamental, so to speak. But once again, it's not a deal breaker for me.
And just for my clarification, there's no round window on the house currently.
There are no round windows on the house.
Thank you.
Your current screen east elevation, which is facing the pool?
Correct. And an adjacent lot. It's not visible from the street.
Okay. My curiosity is, why put the balcony on the back? Would it ever cross your mind to put a balcony facing the pool?
The balcony on the back is just for plantings, really. Okay. That's what we're thinking, because it faces south. On this side, we were not going to put a balcony there because maybe later on there'll be an arbor or something above an eating area, but at this point, we were not determined to do that yet.
Just curious, thanks.
Yes, that was the reason.
Any further questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Benjamin Slot, presenting case 2419 for 616 Claymore Drive. I'll go through this pretty quickly since the applicants covered most of the changes. There's the location of the aerial, the front side of the house, photos from the property from all existing angles. The request essentially was to combine two buildings together, combine them into one, reduce the non-conformity of the property, and of course put an addition onto the second floor of the accessory structure and cutting off a small portion that was built, I believe, after 1925. There's been several details added to the floor plan and exterior plans. This is the inside of the floor plan. The image to your left shows the connection between two buildings. The image on the right shows the second floor. The demolition plan calls for the removal of that gray area off to the side and the existing doors. The east elevation, as presented, existing and proposed. And the north elevation, which shows the difference between the new accessory building combined with the primary structure. The west elevation, and finally south. We do believe this meets codes 9 and 10. Our recommendations are approval of the following conditions: that the windows must be white, clear with low E glass. The decorative onlookers must be wood and not composite or high-density foam molded material. And the new exterior railing to be compatible and complementary with mission-style architecture. Any questions?
Questions of staff? Did we previously establish whether the garage doors are original or not? I'm trying to remember back to the last meeting, because it looks like the design from the existing to the proposed is changed. It has lights.
Let me pull that slide up so we have reference, please. Are you talking in the hallway area or in the garage area? Am I reading that the right slide?
Yes, that's the right slide. Is that considered a contributing accessory structure?
Yes.
The garage?
The portion that was proposed for demolition is within the setback. And I believe it was used a storage room. I don't believe, is it? Yep, please come on.
The garage doors from our investigation are not, they were basically built by one of the handymen that is working on the property right now last time. So they were not historic in nature from what we've been able to discern. The mansard roof on this, if we go to the other views, it's hard to believe that this type of, where can we see it here? Is it possible to zoom in? No, I can't zoom in. But there's a mansard roof on this, which I haven't seen anywhere else in the entire Flamingo Park area. It's very hard to believe that that had anything to do with the historic quality of that structure. Whereas you see this type of thing much more frequently. So from what we can discern, the doors are not historic, and there are other areas in Flamingo Park that have things that are similar to this, where, once again, I'm just trying to match what we saw in the area in terms of the style of the door, but if there's one preference that Ben and the staff actually think would work slightly better, it's not really, we're willing to work on that. Is that okay?
I have another question of the applicant, if that's all right. Sure. It's on the north elevation. Mr. Salata, do you mind pulling that up?
I'm sorry, which one?
The existing north elevation. Okay, so my question for the applicant is, above the existing arch, I'm wondering why there's such a difference in the head height and the spring point of the arch between the existing and the proposed, those two entry arches. And the garage doors are at least a foot taller than the existing.
The question, once again, I can't point to it, but this seems to be out of proportion in terms of the drawings, in terms of what our drawings actually are. I don't know if it was reformatted or not. If you look at the perspectives, if you look at the previous plans that I was showing, but the question is the height of the doors relative to the arches in the front. Is that what I'm understanding?
The existing arches are drawn two different ways between your existing and proposed.
Yeah.
So if you look at the existing, the height between your roof line and your arch has a lot more distance than the one below it. It looks like
They should be identical.
Okay.
I believe, if I'm looking at a photograph that we did, the correct proportion is the upper volume. We're not changing that. So if you look at the perspectives, can we pull up the perspective?
I think we need to have an accurate set of drawings to be able to judge a project from.
What's the request again? I'm sorry.
I think what I'm hearing is that there's a drawing or a drafting error between the elevations.
No, I think that there's what we have. Those were from probably the previous elevations, the previous presentation. The new presentation, the existing and the proposed are the same. Actually,
I'm looking at your line drawings for the existing and proposed, and they match what Mr. Salata had on the screen.
you are correct. I'm looking at them as well. So it's just that existing portion which is not being touched, is what we're saying. Yeah. So the discrepancy on the existing elevation, which is, I don't understand why that happened, but apparently it has. But if you look at the photographs of the property, you can clearly see the proportion of what is existing. But to be clear, that's not being touched. That's the existing structure.
The inaccuracy of how that arch is drawn is also what's making your garage doors a foot taller than the existing opening.
So what's the desire here, I guess?
Excuse me?
What's the desire for me to understand?
an accurate set of drawings so that we can discern what is being changed.
Okay, there's nothing being changed on the existing house except for the rear section where the garage doors are. So we can certainly correct the one drawing to match the other. If that is the desire.
Any further questions of the applicant or staff? Okay, thank you. Do you have any members of the public that would like to comment on this project? Okay, seeing none, we'll go into executive session. Do we feel we have enough information to move forward with approval with conditions?
I don't feel like the drawings are accurate enough to be able to give an approval. A foot difference in the drawings makes the garage doors at least a foot taller than they're supposed to be. And those kinds of inaccuracies could mean that we're approving changes that are not intended. So the drawings represent the work, and they have to be accurate. And there continues to be fenestration alterations that need to be done with what is presented, and the drawings aren't accurate. So that's what I'm struggling with, and I'm not sure the best way to approach that.
Well, I have to say I'm generally very supportive of the application as a concept and as actually a design. However, now that you kind of have my full attention on the matter, the height of the existing garage structure is absolutely being raised higher. And if it's not, we don't have the elevation marks showing the dimensions on either the existing or the proposed elevations to confirm or deny that. So while generally I'm supportive of the new second floor addition to this structure, I'm not sure exactly how much is being, I guess, demolished and raised, but it certainly is, and I think that the garage doors are getting longer, taller, because the ceiling height is getting raised. And if not, then the drawings, when they're marked, not just second floor and top plate, but actual dimensions, will be able to see that.
Do you think that this can be worked out with staff? Or do you think the applicant needs to come back before the board?
I think if staff knows what the issue is, and they, just to provide more measurements and details to really prove out, because it looks like just based off of these designs, it almost looks like it's two separate systems were used. I mean, I can't verify that 100%, but I think that would be reasonable to present it to staff with more details to make sure that there's no elevation being added to the second structure.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry. Like, I don't see the zoning legend showing the height. So I'm assuming I'm assuming the structure can be 2 stories in the back. That's, an assumption that the zoning review has been done. But the drawings do not show the height of the 2-story structure in the back. None of them do, and the legend doesn't. So I can certainly see Kristen's concern, but for me, since I'm generally supportive of the idea of a 2-story addition back there, and the demolition to bring the structure more into compliance, I'm generally okay, and I'm assuming that staff will work out with the zoning heights. If that makes sense, or I'm not sure if I'm being contradictory to myself.
I mean, I think the zoning compliance will be handled, right? It wouldn't be approved in permitting, and I'm sure that staff will or has reviewed it for some kind of zoning review, even though they have a lot of projects that they're reviewing. I think my greatest concern is that we're not approving drawings that imply changes that we're not catching.
To that garage structure.
Well, like I pointed out, the image that's on our screens, it has the arches. The way it's drawn in elevation of the proposed actually has those being raised higher. If you look at between the north elevation of the existing and the north elevation of the proposed, Mr. Salata's image actually showed it because they were side by side with that. I mean, that also, exactly. So above the arches, you can see how that distance has changed from the existing versus the proposed. So that's what I'm not trying to be a stickler. All I'm trying to say is that drawings mean something.
They're an abstraction. The door heights and the door lintels are remaining the same. There's no intent to change any heights or any heights within the structure. But certainly clarification of that with construction drawings would be added before anything would be done for staff to review and approve. But I'm sorry, my staff somehow did not get that proportion right, and I don't understand how, because it's supposed to be representing the same thing. If anything, we've made the existing house smaller than the
But we have on record in your testimony that you are not changing front structure A.
Correct. We're not changing structure A, and we are not changing the height of the doors of structure B.
And you'd be okay with us adding those as conditions of
Yes.
approval?
Yes.
That you'll work with staff to clarify that in the construction
Yes, I will.
documents? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we also be mindful, the connection piece from existing to garage, your height elevations are going to be different anyway, so he's going to have to raise that up regardless. So we just want to make sure that the connection piece is flush with the new additions.
Can I ask for clarification on that one? So like the hyphen between the two structures, right?
Sure. So you have an existing garage. That garage is already essentially below grade from the existing house. At some point, they're going to have to address the, whether it be the pilings, whether it be some sort of footers for the second floor, but that height elevation, as you're pulling in your car, it's changing from garage to then living. So I just want to make sure that that garage to living and the connection from existing to garage, it blends and mirrors, really well. That's just my only concern of that elevation. But they can figure that out on the building side.
Okay. If it was a condition,
No.
would it be,
No,
okay.
no. This was
That's
just
what
a-
I'm trying to figure out.
This was just a
Okay.
point of clarification.
Okay, and then my other question to put before our board is the set of 3 windows that are each over the garage. I feel like historically that would not be more than a set of 2 per, like the fenestration pattern. That's just something that I'm noticing on the amount of fenestration. I don't know if anyone else feels that way. I would be suggesting it as a condition. Well, you know what? I'll try a motion and we'll see. How about that? Mr. Salata, I thought you had some conditions. No? Am I looking at the wrong sheet? Oh, I found it. Thank you. Sorry about that. I move that the Historic Preservation Board approve application number 24-19 for ad valorem pre-construction alterations and additions in accordance with standards 9 and 10 as set forth in the Historic Preservation Ordinance, Ordinance 3554-02. The motion is based on the testimony presented along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitutes competent substantial evidence. In addition, the approval of this request is made conditional upon the following restrictions, stipulations, and/or safeguards that I move are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the Historic Preservation Ordinance and the historic preservation element of the comprehensive plan of the City of West Palm Beach. The conditions include the following. Roof tile must be true barrel tile. 2, windows must be white with clear glass and no low E. 3, decorative outlookers must be wood and not a composite or high-density foam molded material. 4, new exterior railing shall be compatible and complementary with the mission-style architecture. 5, garage doors, the head height shall match the existing. 6, there shall be no changes to the arches at the entry. 7, change the set of 3 windows above each garage door to a set of 2 windows above each garage door. And 8, radius windows shall feature single hung windows.
Kristen, did that last one capture the circular window?
That's what I'm talking about, yeah.
I'll second.
So changing the radius to a single hung.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries, project approved. Thank you. Moving on to new business, case number 2424, 516 29th Street.
Christopher Steinbeck, 516 29th Street. This is for demolition of a non-contributing structure in the rear southeast corner. This is a building, I don't know when it was built, probably in 1990. We don't know exactly. We bought the property in 1999. The structure was never really built properly. It's always been a problem. The floor has always been saggy. The building is now in disrepair. The ceiling's falling in, the outside walls are caving in. The walls are rotted. I'll go on to the next. You can see this was after the hurricane, and we really just want to just tear it down. You can see the walls are falling in. That's the only side of the structure that actually looks somewhat okay. And that's really the structure. The rest of this is I believe it was built in 1990, but it's not historical. That's it.
Okay. Which hurricane?
This was from 2017. I don't know what was the name of that's when the roof started leaking, but the structure itself was never really good. It was just always poor, and that's when the roof started to leak, and then shortly thereafter the roof started to cave in.
Okay. Any questions of the applicant?
Are you currently inhabiting the property?
Excuse me?
Are you currently living in it?
Yeah. Not that structure, obviously.
Right.
What was that? Oh.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Ann Hamilton presenting case number 24-24 for a demolition at 516 29th Street. As the applicant indicated, this is a non-contributing accessory structure. Don't have an exact date of construction. If he says 1990s, I will probably agree with him. This is in the Old Northwood Historic District. This is the front portion of the existing site. As you can see, the existing main residence is in fairly good condition. However, the subject building is obviously in a pretty advanced state of disrepair and is, I think, actively a hazard at this point. The request is just to demolish this one non-contributing accessory structure. As you can see, this is a current view of the city's GIS viewer. It is a non-contributing structure, and there is no proposal for a new construction to replace it. We do not believe that demolition of the structure would represent any sort of irreparable loss to the Old Northwood Historic District or the city of West Palm Beach. And as you know, there is a requirement that simultaneous new construction is provided when a demolition occurs. However, this is an accessory structure. It may or may not have been constructed with permits, and reconstruction would be unfeasible. This is the code section about the demolition criteria and waiving the new construction requirement. There is ongoing code enforcement proceedings regarding the condition of the structure. It's in the best interest to demolish the structure as soon as possible. Reconstruction would cause the applicant to exceed the allowable square footage for accessory structures on the site, and multiple neighbors have reached out to provide public comment that they would prefer that this structure is not reconstructed. Therefore, we are recommending approval of this demolition. Thank you.
Questions of staff? Okay, thank you. Do any members of the public that would like to comment on this case? Okay, seeing none, we'll go into executive session.
I think it's pretty straightforward. It's non-contributing and it's in no condition to be inhabited. So I will go ahead and make a motion. I move that the Historic Preservation Board approve application number 24-24 for demolition of the non-contributing accessory structure in accordance with the demolition guideline as set forth in the Historic Preservation Ordinance, Ordinance number 3554-02. The motion is based on testimony presented along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitutes competent substantial evidence.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Approved. Thank you. Our next case is 24-25 701 Palm Street.
Good evening, everyone. Walter Hyde, architect, representing Margaret Now Frazzini. As always, appreciate everyone's attendance and time tonight. Appreciate the work you guys do for the community here. We're here to propose an addition to an existing frame vernacular home in the Grandview Heights district. It's all single story currently. We're proposing to use the all single story bonus to achieve the addition. This is a typical situation where the historical home is struggling to keep up with the times. It's only a 2-1 right now with a living room, a small dining room, and a kitchen. So it could really use an owner's suite and maybe that extra den or family room in the back to really be utilized and survive and continue to function as a single family residence for a family. A few things happened to the site in the past. So while we're on the site plan, before I get too far into it, I would like to point out that there are actually 2 curb cuts that exist on this lot. One was abandoned over here to the southwest side. A current one exists in front of a current garage, which I'll note this property doesn't currently have the 2 off-street parking stalls it's supposed to have. It's on a corner lot, so it does struggle with that condition. There is a proposal to relocate a new curb cut that will allow for the 2 off-street parking stalls to exist on the northeast side of the property. So once again, we're looking to do the single-story 570 square foot addition. This is the existing house as described. There is an existing garage and sunroom in the front, in addition to the rooms I previously discussed. The remodel involves converting the garage to habitable space and doing this extension off to the west side. This is the foundation and roof plan. Roof plan I'd like to draw attention to because the main home, you would figure, has the main ridge that runs east-west, but in my hypothesis, something happened to this home at some point with this reverse hip that was added to the home, and due to the width, it somehow ended up overtaking the original ridge height of the home. I've never really seen that happen before, except in maybe a rare case of an alteration that didn't work out. So here are the proposed elevations. We do propose to completely remove this garage door that we do not feel is original to the residence, which I will get into further in a moment. Our simple single-story addition to the side with the matching roof line, matching clapboard siding, matching standing seam metal roof. We would love to apply shutters to the home to give it a little bit extra character. I believe it would have originally had shutters, and at some point they were removed. This is the north and west elevation and the building section. We're just simply matching the existing floor and ceiling heights, not going for anything too extreme there. In case there was any concern about the curb cut relocation, we did already contact the engineering department and they did give us the thumbs up. So in regards to the home, and its current garage. This original home is believed to be built in 1937. There's a little confusion across some of the real estate listings, as well as the Papa page listing it as a 1955. I truly believe that this home originally, and this is backed up by the curb cut that I'll show you, would have had a carriage house like all the rest of the homes in the neighborhood. So here is 701, and you'll note most of the contributing structures on this block all have detached accessory structures, as do the ones on the block below and adjacent. So we know the commonplace for the 30s was to have the detached carriage house, not an attached garage. So here is the old curb cut that exists, which I'll note is excessively longer than the curb cuts that are currently permitted. It is not shown on the survey, unfortunately, but I do believe that in the early 2000s, when this pool was put in, whatever remnants of this carriage house either was already gone or it was removed. I was unable to find documentation of its removal, but the curb cut tells me that there was something here, and this is what I feel it probably looked like. I'm going to get into some specifics, but for good reason, because we are touching the facade of this contributing house. So I'd like to point out some modifications that have been done in the past in the exact area that we plan to modify. So if I could first draw your attention to the existing floor plan. The dining room is centrally located in the back of the home, which is the north side. This picture from an old real estate listing does document that the dining room was here, and this wall that was at the kitchen did exist. It is this same wall here, which I'm only bringing up because this window, I was thinking maybe someone moved this window, but I can see here that it is relatively adjacent to this wall, and it is pretty much where it still exists today. But what I would like to point out is that to the left side of this window, there's about 2 feet for a dishwasher and maybe 18 inches for a cabinet. And if we go to the current condition, that house would have ended here at the oven. So at some point, this is also supported by the Papa page, there was an addition done to the west side of the home. Additionally, I'm showing photos of 1930s stucco and construction with rough frame timber. This is what we expect to see in a 1930s home. When we investigated the garage, which we are proposing to convert to habitable space, we found more modern construction with regular nominal dimensional lumber and wire mesh stucco plaster job, not a 1930s build. Here's the picture of the Papa page, which does portray that there was some additions done here. Again, I do believe that this garage was in no way original to this home. It could have been a carport, it could have been a wraparound porch. I don't want to speculate, but from what I can tell from our investigations, that this is not original. I would love to show you photos of the rafters of the home that I think would have made everything super clear, but it's unfortunate that the previous owner actually encapsulated the entire roof structure, so I'm unable to investigate that. This is the remainder of the Papa page. Just a real estate listing showing the 37 versus the Papa page that actually shows the 55. So again, I do think that this home in the mid-50s received a rather large modification that caused someone to even call it a new build. Around the home, this is the clapboard siding. This is the original clapboard siding. It's pretty obviously original. It's got a lot of layers of paint on it. On the west side of the home that we plan to modify, this is what you'll find. It's pretty well done, match of that style clapboard siding, but you can clearly tell that it is not the same. And there is an application in the system for hardy board siding, so I wanted to include a picture of this because it is on the accessory structure, and that is not what you see or what we would plan to do at the new addition. We'd be matching the clapboard, not this hardy board. This is a clearer image of the area of the home that we plan the extension on. And this is the front of the home currently. One of the conditions that was made is in regards to potentially keeping this garage door, which we are very opposed to. We would really like to get rid of this curb cut. There's no room to park a car in front of the garage. We don't want the delivery guy trying to pull up in here and causing issues. We, most importantly, don't want to support the continuance of a feature that we don't feel is original to the home. When I look at this home, it looks like a covered porch was here, not a garage. And the curb cut to the west supports the fact that there would have been a detached structure, which is where you would have parked your vehicles. I think when vehicles became more prominent in society in the mid-50s, someone wanted it right next to their house, which was when this was done. That's the end of my presentation.
Questions of the applicant?
The off-street parking, you're planning on moving it off of Georgia? Is that correct?
That is correct. I will note that there is a church to the southeast corner, so parking on Palm gets a little hard. You can actually see there's a no parking sign in front of their house, so it's most appropriate to try to relocate it to the less traveled street, which is Georgia.
So Walter, when you park, let's say on the proposed section on Georgia, if I'm carrying my groceries, I'm going all the way around onto New York to then put, that seems a little bit like a long walk.
At some point, we originally had a door that maybe is no longer existing due to the owner's, oh no, we do have it. So you would come in here, park, and walk right here. So about 30 feet. You come in the back door and be right in the kitchen. There was that a little back and forth on that, but at the end of the day, I got the door.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Ann Hamilton presenting case number 24-25 for ad valorem pre-construction additions and alterations at 701 Palm Street. This is in the Grandview Heights Historic District. It is a corner lot on Palm Street and Georgia Avenue. According to city records, this was built in 1937. The building contractors were Burnup and Sims, and it would probably be best categorized as a minimal traditional style house, although it's a little bit on the difficult side to categorize. As you can see here, this is a current view of the site facing from Palm Street. The request is to add an addition of approximately 500 square feet to the west of the existing residence to convert the attached garage into a master bathroom, and some general site work, including relocating that existing driveway to the Palm Street side of the lot. Or sorry, Georgia, that's a typo. This is the site plan, the proposed site plan. As you can see, the addition will be fairly not visible, assuming that the current vegetation remains from the Palm Street side. Here's the proposed floor plan. This includes infilling the former garage door opening, the proposed roof plan, and the proposed elevations. Here's the proposed south elevation, which includes that infill of the garage, and some added shutters, not much changed beyond that, and the addition. Here's the east elevation. Not much changes there except the shutters. The north elevation, you can see the addition here. The west elevation, we do believe that this meets all applicable codes and are recommending approval with the condition that all new windows shall have white frames with clear glass and OG muntins. This is a departure from what is in the staff report. We did remove the condition about retaining the garage door opening, as it's pretty clear from the applicant's evidence that despite this appearing on Sanborn maps from the 1950s, this is a later addition. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of staff?
Ann, hi, thank you. The staff memo identifies this as 1925 and
That's
a
a
mission
typo.
revival
That's a
and
typo, yeah.
contributing.
It is contributing. It's 1937 minimal traditional.
It has an existing metal roof,
It does, yes.
and that was approved through this commission.
I believe it was a building permit. Generally, things in the past, we have approved buildings that have horizontal siding to have metal roofs. So I did not look at the exact permit history, but I believe it was an approved alteration at a permit level.
And the patterned red walkway was approved.
I believe, again, don't know the permit history. Generally, that is something that we would approve. Something like a brick walkway, we generally are supportive of.
I have a question. So for the Secretary of Interior Standards, changes to a property that have acquired historic significance in their own right will be retained. So I know you know what my question is going to be. So is this alteration that was done arguably around 15 years from when the house was originally built, is that a significant alteration because it helps tell the story of the automobile and the integration and the importance of that kind of pattern of development and transition over time?
That's a great question. I think that's the direction I had leaned towards in the beginning. That being said, and I know that this is not, the world's best justification, something about the garage doesn't look right. It doesn't look like it's an original piece of the building. Yes, it would have been part of the evolution of the structure, but it's not an alteration that you'd typically see people make. With the relation to the front porch, I guess it's not a feature that I would say is representative of that type of home, which is why I leaned the opposite way. But I can see it both ways. And again, I think that this was a fairly early addition. The Sanborn map, I think, is from the 1950s. It is shown there, so within 15 years.
Any further questions of staff? Thank you. Do you have any members of the public that want to speak on this case? Okay, seeing none, we'll go into executive session.
Ms. Schuyler, I would like to hear your thoughts on the the last conversation we were just having with staff.
I don't know, I guess all additions are not created equal. I mean, even though it obviously dates back to over 50 years ago, how does it impact, I guess, the overall significance of the building as a contributing structure? I agree that the placement is somewhat unusual. And I mean, is our job to, where possible, bring buildings built in a certain style back into greater alignment with what's appropriate for that style, and in keeping with other buildings built in the same style within the district? I guess you could argue it either way. I don't know. I don't really have a problem with it.
And I'm not saying I do.
Yeah. Anybody else want to weigh in?
I think the applicant made a well-articulated proposition. Obviously defining, going down to the granular level, and so is defining the, material used for construction. So I would have no problem with it in its current state, in its current proposal. That's one thing if they came, if they came to it and they, in their presentation, they kind of ad-libbed a little bit and were going more so off of feeling and conjecture versus actually bringing substantive evidence, which, kind of furthers my position on that.
Yeah, I look at this and I think it kind of makes my mind go into a larger question about site surveys and years of the surveys and what creates a contributing structure versus a non-contributing structure. Just in my time here, I've seen lots of houses that are post-war 50s that are far more charming, far more curb appeal, far more interesting architectural elements than this. And to Amanda's point, all additions aren't created equal. I almost like, well, not all older structures are created equal, and I have no problems with any aspect of this application. It just, I guess I'm coming about from a very bad position that I don't think it's a very contributing building.
I think because we've been in this situation, definitely more than once, we've taken the stance in the past of it's not our job, right, to determine whether it's contributing or non-contributing. So it's being presented as this. In terms of my question, I was asking for conversation, not because I had a particular stance on it. I remember a commercial project several years back that was taken back to a different period. And so it's just kind of a continuation, even for my own understanding of where on the spectrum does that evolution or significance have enough significance and help tell the story of the property over time. I think I just keep reading through the standards for rehabilitation, and I think it's kind of a gray area. And I think that what the applicant has presented is extremely reasonable and, like one of our other board members said, extremely thoughtful. The fenestration patterns, the detailing, all of it takes precedence from the existing structure that's there. And I think if anything, maybe it's removing a conjectural feature from a later time period, like when I read standard number 3. So given those reasons, I am in favor of the application.
I also appreciate the lengths that they're going to restore interior features that are not within our purview.
And how clear the drawings are. It was really nice to see existing and proposed on the same sheet. So easy and straightforward to understand.
Any further discussion? Would someone like to make a motion?
I move that the Historic Preservation Board approve application number 24-25 for ad valorem pre-construction alterations and additions in accordance with standards 9 and 10 is set forth in the Historic Preservation Ordinance, ordinance number 3554-02. The motion is based on the testimony presented along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitutes competent substantial evidence. In addition, the approval of this request is made conditional upon the following restrictions, stipulations, and/or safeguards that I move are necessary to ensure compliance with purpose and intent of the Historic Preservation Ordinance and the historic preservation element of the comprehensive plan of the City of West Palm Beach. The condition includes the following: all new windows shall have white frames with clear glass and OG buttons.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries, project approved. Thank you. Our next case is 24-23, 301 Barcelona.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Caleb Laux, architect for FGS Design, representing the client at 301 Barcelona Road. The application is for a new construction and a demolition of a non-contributing existing structure on the site. So I'll go through the existing structure. Oops, overshot. Existing structure is a one-story house. I believe it was built in the 50s or 60s. It's pretty obvious, more of a mid-century feel as compared to the rest of El Cid. So the client would like to start over and do something more in keeping with what is going on around the neighborhood. The proposal is for a 4-bedroom house, mostly 2-story with a 1-story bedroom suite adjacent to the pool. Go through the plans. The mostly public on the first floor, kitchen, living room, dining room. We are opening, we had a garage, but in an attempt to minimize the impact of the lot coverage, we are proposing it be a porte cochere. So it's calculated 50% so that we can get that 4th bedroom suite on the ground floor. And the second floor is all, all private, all bedrooms, all with ensuite bathrooms. I think our rendered elevations did not upload to the presentation. It's unfortunate because so the idea is in keeping with a lot of what's going on in El Cid, basically breaking up the 2-story mass as much as we can so that you have sort of an A-B relationship with the 2 stories. The bedroom addition, we're trying to keep it low towards the back of the lot. The side elevation we're trying to break it up with the fenestration with different fenestration bays. We have a facing South Olive. We've broke out this bay to kind of relieve the facade, but we have different sort of fenestration bays. In this outside corner, we're proposing something that tells the story of basically a Florida room that might have been enclosed at a later time. So that's why we have sort of lower windows here and then a large arch that is, we have a false railing below, so the window is not, complete floor to ceiling. In the interior of the lot, we open up with a little bit more fenestration away from the street. It's the owner's request to kind of add more fenestration towards the interior of the lot. On the rear facade, less fenestration for obvious reasons. The massing, and then as the 3D kind of complements the massing that we were talking about. Sort of last minute today, based on comments with staff, we were putting together some houses that we were leaning on. So this house on Medina, there's a few copies of it where it shows that A-B relationship at the front. There's several copies in the neighborhood. Also, I believe 3517 Washington Road is a 2-story house with a 1-story addition. That's another one we were looking at. And apologies, I know our application included the renderings, but when we uploaded this today to get to the PDFs, they did not include our renderings. We do have a little sketch of what we were kind of hoping for, effect-wise. And that concludes my presentation.
Questions of the applicant?
Is this stonework going to be cast stone?
The idea is that it's stucco. There's a lot of precedent in all the historic districts of rustication that's just basically done in the stucco, and we're trying to emulate that. So I show it as a two-tone, just to kind of maybe emphasize it a little bit. Might be a little too contrasty, but really it's something more subtle, as you see in most of the neighborhoods, and there's lots of examples.
And the doors and windows are going to be powder-coated aluminum in a brown finish, or is that wood?
Yeah, that was the idea, like a bronze look. Yes.
But it's metal?
Yes, that helps it kind of darken the fenestration opening. I think we have that on the end of the application. Yeah, this cocoa bean, which is what CGI offers, as far as a darker brown.
And did you explore any scheme where the driveway remained on Barcelona?
There is, with regards to a garage or like a porte cochere. Well, we're intending the off-street parking to be off of Barcelona, so the porte cochere would be incidental, maybe mostly for when the owner's away, but the intention is that the curb cut remains on Barcelona, so that's why we have the parking court labeled on the site plan. Does that answer your question?
Any further questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good evening. Ann Hamilton presenting case number 24-23 for demolition and new construction at 301 Barcelona Road. This is a property in the El Cid Historic District. It is non-contributing and was built in 1948. It is located on the corner of Barcelona Road and South Olive. Here's a photo of the existing home and some of the adjacent properties on Barcelona and South Olive. One interesting thing to note, this property on South Olive was actually possibly at one point, based on one of the documents about the El Cid Historic District, a carriage house to 301 Barcelona. Just a matter of curiosity, not that it should matter. The request is for demolition of the existing non-contributing structure of approximately 1,744 square feet and construction of a new two-story Mediterranean single-family residence of approximately 3,240 square feet, as well as general site work. This is the proposed site plan. This includes adding that curb cut along South Olive and the parking court along Barcelona. This is a proposed roof plan. It's proposed to be roofed in a barrel tile. The proposed first floor plan with that carport that the applicant referenced. The proposed second floor plan. The front elevation. As you can see, it's a side access and has a large arched window. One of the side elevations, this is the one facing Olive Avenue with that carport opening and the front door. The other side elevation and the rear elevation. This is the streetscape. You can see it in context of the neighborhood and a massing study that the applicant has provided showing all sides of the structure. We believe that demolition of this non-contributing structure would not represent an irreparable loss to the El Cid Historic District or to the city of West Palm Beach. We do believe that this meets the Secretary of Interior standards and Historic Preservation Ordinance for new construction, as the Mediterranean-inspired design does complement El Cid, and are recommending approval with one condition. All windows shall have clear glass and OG muntins with low E coating permissible on non-street facing elevations. Thank you.
Do you have the existing site plan? Because I see it listed on the cover page, but it doesn't. I see proposed site plan, but I don't think we have the existing site plan.
I don't believe I have one, no.
Is that a requirement of submittal?
I'm not sure. I would have to double check.
I don't think it is for new construction because the survey would be equivalent to documenting the existing.
The reason why I ask is that, as you indicated, this is not the original size of the lot, presumably. And so it's not as deep as the other lots surrounding it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just wondering what the current setback is along Olive for the existing building compared to what is proposed. Like, are there, do corner lots have two front yard setbacks?
A corner lot has your front yard setback, which is on the narrowest portion of the lot, and then a corner side. I believe for this size of lot, and I don't know the size of lot off the top of my head, it's either 12.5 and 15, and I think this one may fall in the 12.5 category. I know from conversations with the applicant, this lot is right on the border of that lot size split.
Okay.
Looks like it's 12 and a half.
Regardless of the number of stories.
Yes.
Any further questions?
No.
Okay, thank you. Any members of the public that want to speak on this case? Okay, seeing none, we'll go into executive session.
I think that the massing in the fenestration is very much indicative of the house on Medina that they showed as a precedent. And I feel like it was clever to use an E.B. Walton house on a tight lot because E.B. developed so much of those smaller lots on the C streets in Palm Beach. And I know that that house on Medina is basically a copy of one on the island. So I think that just as a starting point for trying to emulate a style and a builder from the 20s, that it was a smart move. And I do think that it is compatible with the neighborhood given that careful study of the fenestration and the massing based on that precedent.
I feel like I have another philosophical question. Well, I mean, we're largely seeing like the wholesale replacement of mid-century resources in a lot of neighborhoods, and specifically in this neighborhood that, you know, I don't know, for one reason or another, we're not deemed contributing. And so we're losing a diversity of architectural styles when we're replacing them with Mediterranean. And so I really appreciate that there's a one-story element that transitions to the other one-story buildings on the street, which I presume are contributing. But my initial reaction was, is this house too grand for this site? Like, especially with the rustication. And at what level should we be regulating something like that? Instead of just looking at the site in a vacuum, but taking into a greater context everything that's happening within a specific historic district.
I might answer your philosophical question with another philosophical question, and that is, at what point do we run the risk of allowing desirable neighborhoods because of oversight, over particularity, let's call it, run the risk of losing some of the homeowners or home buyers that would otherwise be willing to undertake the effort and expense to keep those neighborhoods desirable. And I don't know the answer to that. I do think that I shared your initial instinct of, well, that's a lot of house for that lot. And certainly thinking of what the block west of Olive conceptually is, it does seem to stand out. At the same time, being a corner lot, I think that there is something that probably deserves some deference in our consideration. And I think that we see what's going on in other neighborhoods that don't have the oversight of the board, and some of those new constructions maybe become something we see more of, unfortunately, as people decide to leave these historic neighborhoods if they're not able to do something like this.
Do we know this is the end user who's commissioning this, or is it developer driven?
That's a good question too.
Not that that matters, but so I think there's another project you did in the neighborhood that was for a developer. I think two.
Yes, this is a private client.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Well, we can see where the trend line is going, especially as in El Cid. If you go west of Olive, more of these mid-century homes they're going to go down. Probably this will be the first of many that we see west of Olive of maximizing lot coverage. Is obviously we have purview over that and we can kind of tame that, but it's as the city grows and people from other regions know El Cid as sort of a destination, quote unquote, designer neighborhood. This is just something that we're going to see more of. And so to answer your philosophical question, right, I think you could imagine it becoming a cornucopia of Mediterranean homes.
I definitely think that's the prevailing style of what we're seeing.
I mean, I also think that that's something that we could give staff direction on, that if we feel like one style is starting to overwhelm the neighborhood, that when preliminary conversations are had, that staff can help direct people away from developing new houses in the Mediterranean style. I think that, or as many, I guess I should say. But this house is so far along at this point, and I don't know that we've had that. I mean, Anne, if you can weigh in too. I don't know if we've had that discussion that I can remember about.
Regarding architectural style in El Cid, or?
The shift, we ever so often we have these conversations about a shift of something, or like the prevalence of something. Like we were allowing the metal roofs, and then there were so many of those that they were starting to change the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And I think we're having a lot of these kind of conversations tonight, but maybe we're at that point with new construction and the Mediterranean language that we need to try to shift away from that to maintain this diversity that our chair is talking about.
And I think I agree with that. I think, to be honest, I think we have been pushing people more towards Mediterranean El Cid because it is the predominant architectural style. But I do think that it is maybe becoming more of a default than it should be. What I would say is I'd be interested in knowing from the board's perspective what other architectural styles they would be open to seeing in El Cid or other historic districts. I can think of, Monterey as maybe a potential in El Cid that would be something to suggest, but I would like some direction on that just beyond. Obviously we have surveys of what we have as contributing structures in El Cid that are considered to have significance, but would just be interested in perspective on that, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think we also have some colonial homes in El Cid. I think there's also a spectrum on which these Mediterranean and mission style houses operate. There's also some that are more vernacular in nature, or even minimal traditional. I mean, you know, as you start to progress from the water towards Dixie. So I think I would generally be in support of anything that has precedence in the specific district.
Okay.
Historic precedence, to be clear. Okay.
I missed the end of the conversation about the rustication because I had to leave the chambers because this door is now locked, where I could previously listen to the meeting while I was back there. But was there any discussion about the rustication? I think it was being discussed when I came back.
No, we kind of moved on.
Go ahead, Mr. Murphy.
No, there's something about the design of this house that I'm struggling to find overall merit in. Kind of jumps out at me that it's too big. And I think the applicant alluded to what appears just to be a respectfully a giant cheat. That if you open this carport up 50%, then it doesn't count towards a lot coverage, even though there's second floor square footage above it. That said, and then I looked at the zoning legend, and it looks like it's over FAR, but it's allowed because it's going to be green. There's green initiative, even though the greenest initiative is to keep the existing structure, with Earth Day being 2 days behind us. But I think that the front rendering is very charming on the cover page. And I think that springboarding off Kristen, I think that there's a lot of merit in that inspiration. But just off my initial review, I find it too tall. Maybe in the second part of the second floor, not the middle part. Maybe if there was a break and that second part was lower, that is subservient and it's above the carport. I'd love the carport to just go away entirely and that whole second floor come down to the first floor. Because I think that you're putting a lot of burden on, is that Olive? With the smallest setback and the greatest amount of two-storyness at 12 and a half, where that should be a front setback, if all zoning was created equal, because it is front setback for your neighbor, which I imagine is double that. So I think that it is overly rusticated, or maybe the scale of the rustication. And I don't want to get hung up on that, because I think that there's a lot of charm and very good design in your skillful hands. I really believe that. But I just think that it needs a little bit of massaging for me to be fully behind it, particularly along Olive. And I think that you value engineer yourself the more you turn away from the primary facade. You see all the rustication kind of fades away until nothing. So there's just undecorated arches for this carport. I don't know how my fellow board members feel about that. But I think it's excellent.
I'm just confused as to why it's there at all.
Yeah. I think it's excellent. The one story, the chimney, that centerpiece is wonderful, but I think it, for me, falls apart at the giant window in the arch and then the South Olive facade and the mass.
If I can address.
We're in executive session.
Sorry. Okay, sorry.
Thank you. I think you articulated what I was feeling. That's why I was asking about that side setback. It just... Yeah.
if you'd reverse it, it would have so much more merit and charm and lightness. If the square footage was on the ground floor and the second floor was an open terrace leading above that ground floor, it would really deflate the building. It's almost like pushing the program of the second floor down to the first floor and then activating that second floor with a terrace. It's almost the reverse is what you're doing, and the reciprocal isn't equal.
So I think we're heading towards a continuance. So is there any further direction?
Kristen, how do you feel about the South Olive facade and that carport that's... I mean, usually the carport leads to the back, not just stops.
It does. I agree that it would be more successful if those alterations were made.
What the ceiling height on the ground floor is, I think it's 12. You know, again, I want to give the applicant a lot of credit because they successfully transitioned from the one-story homes along Barcelona, and in a way they're kind of free and clear because they're a corner lot, and corner lots can usually accommodate more mass. I find. Particularly because you have the right of ways to eat up a lot of the perspective of that.
Yeah, I think why I've been a little bit quieter than usual is because I can tell that this is a very thoughtful application and that there was a lot of consideration given to, you know, the articulation and its sense of place. If we're leaning towards a continuance or conditions, then I think there's just we have a couple of targeted areas it seems like we're looking at to make an impact. I think the rustication was I guess the thing that I felt maybe wasn't quite right when I looked at it the first time, because of the level of ornament for kind of the size of the structure traditionally. But I was essentially deferring to the applicant because of the careful study. But if it's going to be continued, I think that's something that the applicant could look at, restraining that use of rustication to fewer areas.
I also think that second floor window along Olive is not sufficient of a break in the massing when you look at how long that roof line is. And it reminds me of the other project on, what was that? Is that on Medina and Sunset?
Is it the one that's on Sunset, the really long one?
Yes, the really long one.
Yes.
And I remember at the time making that comment, and I think there was, a combination of balconies and, almost the appearance of a sleeping porch that was enclosed, and to see it built, it's not enough, it doesn't give enough relief when you're on the street. And so that, when I look at this, it reminds me of that. Does everyone feel we've given sufficient feedback? direction? Okay. Would someone like to make a motion?
I think you wanted to come up.
You want to,
I think the architect wanted to come up at one point.
and you'd like to hear?
No.
Okay.
No. No? Okay.
No, if you, yes,
no,
go ahead.
I just wanted to, I have no comments in general about, as far as what you have to say about the massing. Those are things I have to go back to the owner about. I was briefed that there was a comment about the rustication by Ms. Hamilton. And so I wanted to say there was sufficient precedent for houses having a lot of rustication, especially on the front facades. Wasn't able to get that all in our presentation that we put in today. But I've created a list, and I wanted to just address, like 112 Rosenfeld Place, I think 258 Granada is one of them, 3209 Washington Road, and even 294 Cordova, which is kind of a catty corner from there. Rustication kind of features prominently. I say that to say I do see a lot of bad rustication going on, and part of the application was an intent to bring back the character of the kind of that hand-worked feel of the rustication that would happen in the neighborhoods. I can come back with better examples. I mean, I've tried to catalog a lot of them, and as I've been working in the historic districts. But I think maybe the two-tone is maybe reading a little bit strong. It's something that I always intended to be quite subtle and be an opportunity for the proper execution of that skill, which has been lost, especially with a lot of the stucco workers that are working here in West Palm. So that was the main thing, but that I wanted to touch upon.
Thank you.
Caleb, I would just ensure that your precedents match the scale of what you're proposing.
Understood.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I move to continue the item to the next hearing, which is May 20th?
May 29th, and just as a advance heads up for all of your calendars, that is a Wednesday.
Wednesday, is that the 27th or 29th?
29th.
To Wednesday, May 29th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Our next case is 24-21 and 24-22, 269 Flamingo Drive.
Good evening. I lost my voice after all that.
Oh, thanks for waiting.
Oh, yeah, no, it's a pleasure. You guys have quite an agenda behind you there, and you did quite a good job at looking at all these things very seriously. Fortunately for your review of this particular application, we're a very much more diminished application in a lot of senses. We've paid attention to the issue of scale and appropriateness of size for the particular residence that we're proposing in addition to today. Now, I understand the first leg of business is the variance. And in so, looking at that for us, I think just talking about it first will be more prevalent point. This is a corner, it's more than a corner lot. It's a lot surrounded by 3 roads, the back of which is on the north side an alleyway, which has now been considered to be a much more substantial street. And the setbacks that are being required for those 3 frontages are imposing quite a hardship on our property. So in 2 previous presentations that have been made regarding this property, you guys did approve accessory structures in case number 20-10 back in 2020 in regards to a much larger presentation where the accessory structures were more aggressively taking an approach to reduce those setbacks more than half. And you all gave approval to that in some measure as this is presented in 2 parts. So here in this particular application for the phase 1 of this, we're asking to have you provide for us a 5-foot setback on the west side of the property to allow for a normal expansion to this ranch-style house, giving the homeowner an opportunity to not have to traffic to their main master bedroom through their kitchen, and allowing them to traffic from their living room directly into a master suite. And in doing so, the addition towards the west would be very diminished in our abilities to do that with just a 10-foot setback on that side. So we're requesting a 5-foot setback for that purpose. Let's see if I can get to a floor plan at least to show you. Now this is actually an existing plan view of the site. This is our existing structure here, and this is the alley/street to the rear, and this is the Coconut Lane, which is adjacent to the Norton. It's a very quiet street. We have very single-story residences towards the south, a 2-story residence towards the west, and towards the west of that, a single-story residence that's just been renovated. To the rear, as you can see, it's still a very dilapidated looking structure, although mission in style. I'm sure it has a lot of character on the inside and some improving character on the outside. The majority of the street has very nicely improved homes, or at least historic looking homes, and they're all differentiated in style. There's nothing that's really consistently Mediterranean, nothing consistently new and modern looking, or at least renovated towards that. The home is defined, at least in your records, as being a ranch style, and the proposal that we're making to it is actually making it more a mid-century, more of a modern, as would be considered emerging through the 50s and 60s and 70s. Now, just towards the variance issue, I guess, how do we sort of take a look at proceeding with that? Is it a vote now at this point to give us approval on that? Do I go through both presentations to get back towards that issue?
You can go through the entire presentation on the project, and then we can make 2 separate motions.
Okay, I didn't want to keep Dodie beyond her dinner time here. So, do you want to address the zoning? Okay, all right, keep going. All right, thank you. So let me get back to the very beginning of this. And I guess one of the first order of business, I do want to introduce Mr. Del Rio here, who's been a very good part of the design effort, and he's been instrumentally responsible for the drawing, and we've collaboratively designed this with the Pollocks. And also to a little bit of a note, it's Lee Pollock, which he was not properly addressed in your initial. So he just wanted to make sure that that clarification was made. And he's also on the board of the El Cid Historic Neighborhood Association, and has been involved in Landmarks and Preservation Council opportunities up in Chicago, Illinois, and so forth. So he's quite experienced in this regard. For your preview of our plans here, what we're looking at is the existing on the left and the proposed on the right. The dark shaded area is our very diminished proposal, which is much smaller in scale than the previous approved proposals that were made back in 2020. We're, just as a scope for the project, although we didn't illustrate the kitchen, but the kitchen exists here. This is currently what is a master with a very small closet and a very small bathroom with an air-conditioned closet here. And this whole area here has a very nice quaint character to it, separating that from its adjacent bedroom, which is currently here, and by a very nice living room with vaulted ceiling, a very single-story concept with a step up here and a step up here. Our current proposal, though, is we're going to lose the step up that we have to this side of the house, keeping the exterior structure as is, but to allow for a much more fluid access from this side of the house to the master suite, where there may be in the future more handicap-related accessible issues. So we'd like to at least make that as a clear point of our proposal. The existing house is, as was termed, a ranch style, and we're moving from that towards more of a mid-century, more of a U-shaped area or building surrounding a pool. And the existing structure in the rear is a pool cabana, which we're also proposing to add a roof structure that is going to be mirroring or at least reflecting what we're doing on the main structure. The current building, I guess we did introduce elements of the previous approvals, and this second slide here illustrates what was approved before. And as you can see in this illustration, a good percentage of the lot was occupied by either accessory structure here and here, with also an addition to the existing building. And the Pollocks have decided that that was a very aggressive scheme that they're not interested in pursuing. So our current approach is to make this a much smaller and more stable and appropriate development, which reflects the nature of the existing building and the character of that site that it occupies. This is our current existing plan. This is our demolition plan. We're going to be simply just taking this wall down here, taking out the existing bathroom, and making the expansion towards the left. And the roof plan here, this is the existing roof plan. This is the demolition roof plan. This drawing here illustrates the proposed roof plan, where we're extending the roof from the existing condition here as somewhat of a minor overlay, although we're trying to mimic in some regards the extension of the geometry that we have in the living area here and allow that geometry to fully occur back in the master suite here. The illustration on the right sort of depicts that volume and vaulted ceiling area in the master suite here, which is somewhat reminiscent of what we're doing or what is existing in the living room. Boy, I'm really running over my language here. My apologies. The elevations are here for the existing and the proposed for the front elevation. And this is the east elevation, and this is the west elevation here. So the west elevation, just want to get my bearings correct. Yeah, this is the west elevation here with the, this is the master suite in the far east side of the property, and this is the existing, which will be converted just simply to a bedroom, and this is the proposed master suite addition. And this is the existing west elevation here. We're proposing to change the two windows in that master suite to, or that single window to a pair of windows. And the, oh, shit, excuse me. I'm getting confused. This is what was originally proposed.
That's exactly what I was thinking, because I'm like, I remember I had a problem with this the first time I saw it, and I don't remember seeing this in the packet. I was so happy that you resolved it.
Thank you so much for that. I just getting lost in too much presentation. So here we are with the proposed elevation for our concept here. And this is the existing elevation here, and this is the proposed elevation here. Nicely illustrated, Eric. This is the north elevation, and we don't have an existing north elevation, but this is obviously the master suite addition to that side. This is the west elevation looking from our westerly property towards us, and this is the east elevation here. And in both of those, we don't see the addition of the master suite in those particular views. These perspectives here sort of illustrate the proposal in perspective form. This would be looking back towards the master suite addition from the northeast corner of the property towards the southwest. And this is looking at the addition from the northwest property back down towards the southeast. And this is looking towards the property from the southeast towards the northwest. And this is looking directly from the south towards the north. The roof proposal, or the roofing proposal that we're entertaining, is a a flat concrete tile, a darker charcoal in color, taking away the barrel tile roof that has presided over this property. I'm not quite sure why that was chosen as a roofing material, except it seems to be consistent with a lot of conceptual approaches, or at least material choices during that era where everyone was going to a mission-style barrel tile or a S-shaped tile just because it was Spanish in nature. And Spanish in nature at the time was selling. So I think that's why that was a prevalent choice at that time. Although we think that this style of architecture is served better by a flat concrete tile. The shutter that we're proposing here to adjacent to the existing windows is in keeping, I think, with what we currently have. Yes, it's in keeping with what's currently there, and we're just replacing the material with same. The street elevation shows the existing two-story structure to the west, and further westerly of that is the single-story structure. And towards the east of our proposed structure, our proposed structure that's having in addition to it, is the Norton Gardens. And I think that should do it. And I am very sorry for the confusion, guys. We're rambling on here. Any questions?
Any questions?
So you're seeking a 5-foot relief on the west side
Yes,
for
sir.
the addition, from 10 to 5?
Yes, sir. Now, when you take a look at the accumulated setbacks, if it was an street lot where you didn't have two side streets, you'd have 10 and 10, which is equivalent to what we're going to have, 15 and 5. So we're meeting the ultimate goal of having that as a larger property in that zoning district. Go back to this site plan because that might be a little bit more useful.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, well, last time, everybody. Benjamin Slaughter presenting HPV cases 2421 and 2422, a cumulative setback variance and alterations and additions for 269 Flamingo Drive in the El Cid district. I did a close-up of the aerial on this so you can see those three roads as how they work in the backside of Van Norton Sculpture Gallery in Palm Beach Day Academy. Those are very tight little roads. I don't know how they're used very often, but it's a nice little unique piece of property here. The first request is for the 5-foot variance in the setback to the west side of the property. They're proposing a 509 square foot addition to the west side of the structure. They're also enclosing 4 feet of slab on the east side of the property and proposed demolishing existing sliders and French doors to the new exterior wall. And of course, there's general site work. There was past approvals with this property. Case 1932 was a demolition proposed of an accessory structure. You saw the plans go up there for all that. And then apparently sometime later they discovered they needed a front variance, setback variance for this. So the variance was approved a little bit later. These plans were never executed, of course. This is the site as 2 days ago. You can see the circular driveway there. The second photo on the right with the white SUV shows behind that fence is where the addition would go, very tucked away within foliage, both from the front and the side. And two other photos, one from going the other side of the circular driveway and the back side of the property. This is the rendering in a 3D scale. I'm showing you from the first image as you pull in from the east side of the drive. And the floor plan to existing and proposed. As you can see on the right side, the building does go within the 5-foot setback, but does keep symmetry in the lot. As the applicant said, if this was any other thing besides a corner lot, it would still be that 15 and 5 and work. The demolition plan shows mostly on the roof side, attaching the new roof into the old roof, and of course on the little side step on the east side of the property. The south elevation is existing and proposed, and the other elevations as existing only. And then, of course, the back side. This is the roof plan. The one proposed on the right is blown out to show against the accessory structure on the back. And the streetscape, as this being a corner lot, we work west to two different houses. It shows the mass and scaling. We do recommend that case 2421 be approved based on the variance. It meets all 10 of the criteria. And we do also recommend that 2422 is approved with two conditions: that the roof tile match the existing. I don't believe there was an addition to the roof plan on the proposals from a barrel tile to a cement tile, but I personally don't have an objection to that. And the windows addition matched the 2014 products with white, with clear glass and no LED on the front facade. Just running through the variance standards, it does comply with all of them. It also does meet guidelines 9 and 10. Any questions?
Questions of staff? Did you at any point discuss the tax abatement program with the applicant?
They had an application in from the previous cases, so no, I did not discuss it with them. From my understanding, it's already on the books.
It's already on the
They
book?
already have one, in fact, for the 2019 case.
Just want to make sure you're aware of the tax abatement program. Okay. Okay. Any further questions?
My question is just the nature of the hardship. So we're saying that the hardship in this case for the variance is just the nature of the corner lot?
Nature of the corner lot with 3 accessory roads.
Okay, thank you.
And like the applicant said, one used to be an alley, but I believe it's a emergency egress for the Palm Beach State Academy now. At least that's what appeared from the street.
Benjamin, if the alley was not an alley and if this property was an interior lot, had 2 interior side setbacks, this project would be compliant with zoning because the sum of the sides equals 20?
Yes, sir.
Although one is reduced to 5?
It'd be 15 and 5, yes.
Great, thank you.
Have you heard from the neighbors whether they're in support of the application?
I believe there's a couple support letters within the packet. There's also an explanation letter from the applicant itself, the architect.
I think that the rear setback is incorrect. Ms. Mittner established a contextual setback for the street because of the dual frontage, and I think you might be more aware of it. Because Austin is dual frontage, but then Ms. Mittner had a contextual setback because of the nature of it. So I believe that contextual setback was 6 feet.
So I remember specifically there was a discussion about pools on that street. I'm trying to think, you talked to Angela about
Yes.
this, right? I would need to look back at what the previous approval was. I do believe there was some discussion of a contextual on that street, but I don't know what the exact amount was.
The one it was established on was 281 Flamingo.
Okay.
Which
That
I did
helps.
not do, but someone in our office did.
That helps.
And I think that that weighs into what the actual constraints of this lot are. Perhaps it was in the presentation, but were we given a comparison of what the previous dimensions were of the previous approval addition? How does it compare? Would it have needed the same variance?
This is what approved on from HP 2010, which shows the variance of 6 feet 11 and 9 foot 6. That was for the accessory structure. I did review this with our head of zoning planning. She came up with, verified that this is a cumulative setback. It's a tricky lot, we agree.
I think she's referring to that the other addition was in the similar location and what that side setback was. Right?
Yes.
Yes. There was also an accessory structure demolition and redo too. So the way we read it from 2421, 2422, we think we got it right. We can always revisit this one if somehow we missed it.
I guess my point is they already have a previous approval that they never, and I'm assuming that doesn't expire, that approval.
No.
So they already have an approval for an addition in that same location. I don't know what the setback was for that compared to this latest proposal, but it seems there's a difference of interpretation as to whether a variance is needed for an addition in that location. A variance would be needed for that location. The one that, what I think, I know that a contextual setback was given for the Austin Lane. So where they're showing a 25-foot rear setback was a contextual front setback because Austin Lane is not an alley, it's a frontage. And because the way that those streets fronted it, Ms. Mittner gave it a contextual setback. So what I'm saying is that the Austin Lane setback, I do not believe, based on Ms. Mittner's interpretation again, because I'm relying on that specific project that's down the street from this, that you have more room back there. So it's, so what is that, the northeast corner of that property, there's more room to develop, right? So I'm saying that the constraints of the lot are not, my understanding is that they're not exactly the way it's shown here. So you still have to have, by code, the 10 feet that they're asking for the variance on. You couldn't put an addition there the way it's proposed without a variance. The reason I brought up the contextual setback is because I'm saying that there's, with that allowance, it looks to me like there's another place to put that volume. So in establishing, I think it's pertinent in establishing if there's a hardship for the lot. But I also think that
There has obviously been a shift in staff since that project. And if this is, the route that Mr. Salata and Ms. Hamilton directed the applicant, then, there's merit in that as well.
But are you acknowledging that there was already a addition approved in that location? That, I guess I'm not following.
I'm talking about something different than you.
Okay. You're talking about how they're determining which variance is being given in this specific.
I'm talking about how are you establishing what is a hardship for this property?
Yeah.
I think she's suggesting, and correct me if I'm wrong, that that they don't need a variance because the addition could be placed at a different place on the property without a variance. I think that's what she's suggesting. And
that is what I'm discussing.
If I recall correctly from the applicant, it has something to do with the functionality of the interior of the residence. And that currently the way it sits is the master's offset from the kitchen, and I think they were looking to alleviate that. If that's correct, you can comment on.
Yeah, I think it's just a little sticky, to a 5-foot variance.
I don't find it that, having usually being on the other side of this, as you know, I think that if we jump across the street on the aerial view, you'll see that historically the development pattern probably had 5 foot or 7.5 foot setbacks. You can see that clear as day. I don't think a 5 foot setback would be out of character for the development pattern. And I know what you're saying in terms of the buildable area is increased by a misinterpretation of the rear setback. But I'm kind of pinning my comfort level on the variance on reading Coconut Lane as a alley that should be undistinguishable as a side street. I'm sorry, as a plain interior side. And the fact that it's compliant with the sum of the sides makes me have comfort in granting the variance.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any members of the public?
Hi, I'm Tula Villavasso at 268 Flamingo Road, right across the street from the house. And I thank you for serving on the board. My late husband, Wayne Villavasso, also served on the historic board and a number of other boards. He was the president of the LCID Association as well. I have no problems with their expansion and the setback. I can tell you I've been in a house for over 30 years. And back then, the barrel tile roof was old. It's the same barrel tile roof. So I do see the change from barrel tile to flat. I don't know. It's not typical. I had a couple of questions for the applicant as to if they do these improvements, how long is it going to take? And I also want to go on record that I do not want to be plugged into my driveway. I do not want to have a 10-point turn to get out of my driveway. There's a sign, no parking during the daytime, right across the street from my driveway. And sometimes vehicles park there, and especially if it's a larger vehicles, it's an issue. So I want to go on the record that I don't want to have an issue trying to get out of my driveway. But as far as the expansion, I have no issue with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
We park 4 to 5 vehicles on our existing circle and this parking pad. I understand your consideration.
Would you like to make your rebuttal at the microphone, just so we make sure we have it on the record, and anyone watching at home can hear you?
My wife has texted me 3 times to ask what's going on. It's a narrow street. There are no parking signs, which the city doesn't enforce, but that's a separate question. We can probably put 4 to 5 vehicles on our existing driveway. Our own cars won't be there when we're doing this. As to how long this is going to take, hopefully the actual construction part, exterior, will be maybe 3 to 4 months, and the rest is interior finish. So we're sensitive to the fact that it's a tight street, and we'll make sure that your ingress and egress from your driveway isn't blocked, because we'd want the same thing for ourselves.
Thank you.
Again, Dodie Glass with Development Services. Just to add as well, it just so happens that we're having conversations about construction management and parking. Last commission meeting was first reading of some provisions. We've always had some provisions in the code that we've been operating with, but we are now talking about the provision for single-family homes once they have a certain number of folks, because we're finding that parking in many areas has been a problem for residents, and it's not commercial users, it's single-family homes with a lot of construction people coming into the neighborhood, and it's making a problem for the residents. So I just figured I'd let you know that. Next commission meeting, there's a second reading. The program will be further developed, but it'll deal both with construction management for single-family along with the commercial properties, which, just by the way, are being bumped up in terms of the threshold because we realize that we have a broader group to capture in dealing with the parking issues. So all of the provisions will be further developed, but I just wanted to let you know it's something we're already looking at.
Thank you. Any further public comment? I'm guessing no. We'll go into executive session. We just got there.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. And I think you have language, to
Kristen, real quick, are we okay with the flat tile roof?
I am okay with the flat
Great.
tile. Do I need to include that? Okay. All right. I move that the Historic Preservation Board grant application number 24-21, a request by Eric Del Rio for variances from section 94-81 of the Zoning and Land Development Regulations, which requires, in addition to a primary structure, to have a 15-foot corner side setback and a 25-foot front setback in the historic single-family high-density SF14C3 residential zoning district at 269 Flamingo Drive. The applicant is requesting a 5-foot side setback, thus granting a 5-foot side and a 5-foot side setback variance. The motion is based on the testimony presented along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitutes competent substantial evidence. The Historic Preservation Board hereby makes finding of fact that each of the 10 criteria in Article 2, Section 94-38D6 have been met for the variance.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Were there any conditions by staff for the second? Okay, I didn't see any.
Sorry, conditions on the setback or on the?
Oh, no, I'm getting ready to do the second motion, and I just
There was
wanna
2
make sure.
conditions.
There, which sheet is it on? I didn't see them.
24, 20.
Or can you pull them up on the screen?
Yes. Sorry, only got 2 hands. Yes, sorry, it's number 16. My apologies. It's a long slide deck. Here we go.
Okay, thank you. So we're not concerned about number 1, correct? So it's just number 2. I move that the Historic Preservation Board approve application number 24-22 for alterations and additions in accordance with standards 9 and 10 as set forth in the Historic Preservation Ordinance, ordinance number 3554-02. The motion is based on the testimony presented along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitutes competent substantial evidence. In addition, the approval of this request is made conditional upon the following restrictions, stipulations, and/or safeguards that I move are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the Historic Preservation Ordinance and the historic preservation element of the comprehensive plan of the City of West Palm Beach, specifically standards 9 and 10. The condition includes the following. Windows on addition must match the 2014 product and must be white with clear glass and no low E on front facade.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries, project approved. And I wish I had said something. It just occurred to me to acknowledge Wayne Villavassa's contributions to the neighborhood. He actually designed the landscaping for the new Belvedere Gateway that I think took 5 or 6 years to actually realize. And unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but I think he would be very happy to see
It's beautiful.
his work so well articulated. It turned out really beautifully. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
With that, we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.